You ready for this?
Gonna be fun.
You will not stand in my way.
Frostborn, hunger. This pleases me.
I do not fear you, mortal.
Your soul shall be mine.
Don't make me laugh.
Need a brew? Oh, I do. Feel a shredding, baby. Let the battle begin.
So hello and welcome to the 55th episode of the Nexus Trolls, a podcast all about Heroes of the Storm, part of the Trolls.gg Entertainment Network. So I'm your host, Linus Daz Kilius, and I'm joined today, as always, by LiQuiuD and Mystic. How is it going, gentlemen?
Excellent.
You guys are getting used to that intro now, so that I don't have to prompt you guys to say stuff back. You just say excellent or doing good or whatever. LiQuiuD, you must be riding a bit of a high after Monday's Troll and the HGC episode. Do you want
a little bit?
Do you want to quickly tell us what happened there?
I mean, it's in the notes later. We'll hit it when we get there. I promise. It was fun. We had a great episode on Monday. It was awesome. So
yes, and I don't know why the audio started playing there again. I'm sorry for those quick little technical difficulties. These things happen. But yeah, okay. We'll talk about it a little bit later. LiQuiuD's going to have a grin on his face ear to ear, and we'll be telling you why shortly. Like I said, he's been riding a high all week. So we've got a special guest on the show this week, Romedy. Romedy, welcome to the show, bud.
Man, I appreciate y'all having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. So for those of you that don't know, Romedy is actually a writer for Trolls.gg. He's put out an article. We're putting out a couple articles following up on the first one, probably one tonight and maybe one tomorrow. I'm not sure exactly what the time frame is going to be. But Romedy, his actual name is, now I should have checked with you first. Caleb Halauer.
Yeah,
is that right?
Oh man, that's pretty good. Yeah, that
Halauer?
That works.
That works, man.
I've probably told this story a few times, but we had Haloran on the show, I don't know, like 30 episodes ago, and me, LiQuiuD, and Mystic called him Halloran the whole time. He didn't correct us till the very end, so now I got to make sure.
Wait, he didn't even correct us. At the very end, we're like, were we saying that right? And he's like, no, it's Haloran. And we're like, what? All right.
So I want to make a point of checking before, but I forgot to. But anyways, we'll just call you Romedy because that's the easier way to go with it. So anyways, Romedy's a third-year grad student in clinical psychology at Washburn University, and he served as a coach/analyst for several amateur Heroes of the Storm teams, including Ascension, Phoenix, and TQ, and he's currently analyst for Team ODI. And he's an intern at the Burt Nash Community Health Center and conducts research on applications of group and traditional sports psychology to eSports. So that's quite the resume. I'm really happy to have you on, especially considering all of the roster apocalypse stuff that's happened recently. There's been a lot of talk.
Wait, there's been roster apocalypse stuff? What?
Yeah, what do you? This is the first I've heard of it, right? But I mean, this is a great time to have someone with a psychology background on, so we can kind of analyze and talk about, the thought process and is this a good thing for the game? Is it a good thing for team development, or if you should be looking within? But before we get into that, we're going to thank our patrons, as we always do. So this show we're never going to charge a dime for it, but if you're looking to support it, you can always head over to patreon.com/trollsgg. We've got several patrons over there, and any bit helps. But again, never feel obligated to, but if you do, it's great appreciated. So we've got a Troll of the Week this week. And the Troll of the Week this week is Razai. He's actually been on the show once before, and like Romedy, he's been writing for the show as well recently. Roz is actually a composer, and he's a music educator, so he's been doing articles on actually like breaking down some of the music from Heroes of the Storm. He did a really popular article actually on The Battle Begins, the first like intro song that everyone kind of associates with Heroes of the Storm. We'll put the link to that in the show notes, but definitely something you should check out. He's going to be doing a regular series on that, and he's also getting into gameplay guides too. He's done one on Lucio so far, and he's going to be doing more like I think Sylvanas and Karazim are two of his other favorite heroes, so I expect to see a couple of those probably roll through in the future.
He loves Sylvanas, I'm not gonna lie.
He does. He's got a strange affliction for the Banshee Queen as well as Karazim too. Their chair league team like loves those guys. So if you ever play Lords of the XR in chair league, make sure you ban out Sylvanas or Karazim because they're probably highly prioritized.
It tilts him so hard.
Yeah, because no one ever I guess Sylvanas depends on the map, but no one ever bans Karazim, right? So that's probably like their pocket pick. They usually take late in the draft. So today, we've got a lot of topics on the show to cover. It's going to be a great show. We've got eSports team psychology. That's why we've got Romedy on here. We're going to be talking about roster apocalypse to go along with that. LiQuiud's got eSports Corner. We're going to be talking about what happened on the show on Monday, too, for Trolling HGC, a milestone show. We also had a PTR patch drop. We had a little minor live patch drop today, too, to fixing some bugs. And then we're going to round the show out with Mystic Shakedown and a HOTS debate, one that we've been putting off since before BlizzCon. We're finally going to get to it today. I promise we're not going to make sure we push that off to the next show.
I was okay pushing it off because I'm just,
It's funny. It's one of those segments that, we kind of enjoy doing, but it's a little nerve-wracking getting into it. So it's one of those ones that's easy to push off, but I know everyone loves them, so we want to try and make sure we get to them.
And I'm worried because we have another guest and we're doing a debate. Am I getting ambushed again, or like what's the deal?
Yeah, last HOTS debate we had Cavalier Guest on, and we surprised LiQuiud by having him debate Cavalier Guest instead of Mystic. But LiQuiud, I can assure you, you're not going to have. We're not throwing in the big guns with Romedy today. We're actually switching the topic to discussing clinical psychology, and LiQuid's going to take on Romedy. Yeah, I think we'll avoid doing that today. We'll have a fair run at it because you did take down the Titan. You took down Cavalier Guests, so it's only fair that we go back to the regular format this time. All right, well, let's get into the news here because we got a little bit to cover today.
Someday, this will make a great story.
Okay, LiQuiud, your time to shine.
I was gonna let you intro it because it feels really weird if I read those first couple of lines.
Okay, well, Trolling HGC, we had the episode for it this week was on Monday, just because of scheduling issues and stuff, and because of some special guests that LiQuiud and Bags had. They had on Yitboss, the manager of Roll20, and Trent, who's been on the show before, an eSports analyst and consultant. And I believe GillyWeed tweeted out one of Trent's tweets about the show, and I'm not sure if that's what the catalyst was for it. Maybe it was Yitboss as well being on the show, or the fact that people were just hungry to hear about some roster apocalypse stuff. But it was the perfect storm. We had all sorts of pros, casters in chat. Now, just reading off the people we saw in chat that were commenting in chat, we had Caldor, Trixler, Snitch, Smexy, Aether, Renal, The Real Sofa. You want to keep reading, so I don't want to mess up any of the pronunciations of these.
I mean, you were doing fine, but it was a very crazy moment for me because like chat was. But before I go through all the rest of the names, and there were a lot of them, and there were a lot of people on there. Our high point, we hit like 162, which is a new high for us. And chat was just like flying by. So at one point I was like, Bags, just keep asking questions so I can deal with chat the whole time. It was bizarre and it was fun. But Renal, The Real Sophist, Lauber was there again, Huge, Indie Bear, Nabby, Casanova, Argy. And yes, I'm totally throwing one out for Argy because he may not be a pro player, but he is awesome. Nappy, Mopsio, King Caffeine, and E. Kevin were all there. Just like, those are just the ones I remember. Dorsch, of course, was there. I'm sorry, buddies, but yeah, it was a crazy night. It was an awesome episode, and it was so much fun. It was way long. The
strangest thing is you were chatting to me in Discord and in the Discord channel to everybody else during the show, and I was like, "Aren't you supposed to be hosting this thing now?" I'm not sure. I know that you guys were also drinking a little bit too, which maybe like loosened it up a little bit. I don't know, but it was a great show.
Just overflowing.
It was so much fun. And we went it was 2 hours and 20 minutes, which our normal episode is an hour and a half, and it went way long. And we have a huge number of views on YouTube for it too. I think we were over 1,600 when I looked earlier today.
Yeah.
So
it was a great episode, and hopefully we'll have some follow-ups to it too. The nice thing about things like that is it ends up opening the door to future guests as well. So fingers crossed we'll be able to line some good people up.
So the other reason I'm smiling so big, because I'm going to go ahead and drop this now. So far confirmed, we have Caldor and Kendrick Swish signed up to come on. to do Caldor, and hopefully Trixler will be on to do an EU preview before HGC 2018. And then Kendrick and Tetra will be on to do a China preview before 2018. So, like, we'll see, man. I'm excited.
You can't get them to sign a T-shirt through the video camera, though.
But I already signed my little thing, so I'm okay there.
Yeah, I guess you did get quite a few signatures at BlizzCon. Yep. So, okay, well, that was an awesome show. Congrats, LiQuiuD. Congrats, Bags, on setting that all up, because it's amazing. And if you haven't checked it out already, definitely check it out. Probably the best format to see it is actually if you check out the Twitch VOD, because then you can get the aspect of the chat as well. And that chat was pretty crazy with the amount of people that just kept dropping into it. Okay, so moving along, we've got back in Black Friday in Here's the Storm. A little bit of a sale that started yesterday. So the link to it's in the show notes, but I mean, if you pop into Heroes of the Storm, it's all over the shop. There's a 360-day Stim Pack discount. There's a Red and Black Friday bundle, which has tempted me. I don't think I've ever bought a bundle before, but this one's got Dreadlord Jaina, Deathwing Diva, Marauder Muradin, Primeval Diablo, legendary skins all included, and it's 33% off. Is anyone thinking about buying this? LiQuiuD's probably already got all these things.
Well, so I remembered before I played today, because I've been playing more lately because I'm trying to retrain myself to play on a keyboard instead of my gamepad and my mouse, which we talked about at BlizzCon. So I've been like forcing myself to play standard. And today, before I played a couple games, I went and looked, and I mean, I went in knowing I'm buying my Stim Pack. I always buy this every year now this is the third year now I've bought that Stim Pack. So I went in and I bought the Stim Pack. I checked out the other bundles. I have everything I want out of the other two bundles already. The only thing I would like is the Dreadlord Jaina would be cool to have. But I never really played Jaina, but I'd still like it because it's a sick skin, but not enough to buy the whole bundle. And I need to go through and check the other stuff that's just 50% off, because I'm sure I had to buy the 11,500 pack of gems to get my Stim Pack, so I have gems to spare at this point. So I'll probably go check the 50% off stuff and buy a couple of those.
Hey, well, it's no surprise LiQuiuD's got a problem. We've known this for a while. Mystic doesn't spend a dime on the game. Romedy, do you spend much money on it at all? You fall somewhere in the between?
Kind of in between. Yeah, like when the sales come out, I'm like LiQuiuD, I'll buy the Stim Pack. I've done that forever. Skins, I pretty much just rely on RNG.
Yeah, and that's what I've been doing for skins recently too. But I mean, like I said, this looks tempting. Not to mention that there's also another bundle called the Back in Black Friday bundle. I'm not going to go over everything there. There's no legendary skins, I don't believe. And then also a lot of heroes, just skins and mounts are also 50% off too. So this might be the time to dabble in if you're like me or Romedy and you like to dabble every once in a while, but not every time there's a sale that comes out like LiQuiuD.
Well, it's a funny. I'm just gonna throw out one other thing. So my wife goes, "Why did we pay Blizzard $100?" And I said, "It's Black Friday and the Stim Pack was back in." She goes, "Oh, okay," and moved on. Like she's like,
she knows.
It's a thing I do. Apparently, everybody knows.
She knows. Problem confirmed with hero skin addiction. That's all right.
I had that same problem in Final Fantasy when we used to play that.
Oh my. Well, at least you've got a very understanding wife.
Yes.
So we had a small hotfix hit live servers today. Now, I'm not going to go over the hotfix because there wasn't really any gameplay changes. There were just a couple little bug fixes here and there. The links in the show notes so you can check it out.
One of them's very important.
Ooh.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, which one is that?
You can no longer see what your what the enemy team in ranked, I think even in unranked, you can't see their profiles, which is important because I think that was a bug that they introduced by mistake, and they needed to do that.
Yeah, I was playing with one of our other Arthurs, Dorsch, actually, and he was like, you can right click on the profile. I was like, oh my god, I didn't know you could do that. And it was on unranked draft, and the person who was just like one of the randoms we were queuing with said, Bang Kel'Thas, the guy last picking here, has like over 1,000 games played in Kel'Thas. I was like, how does he know that? But yeah, and then I realized he could do that, but apparently not anymore. So it's unfortunate they took that away, but I mean, I guess it's good because you don't want to have that kind of knowledge of the other team in the draft. It's almost like an unfair advantage. So probably best that they took that away. So the PTR patch also hit a couple days ago. It's going to hit the live servers December 11th. Hanzo is not officially available on the PTR until next week. But that being said, there's a tricky way you can get him in try mode, though. This was broken by one of our viewers in our Discord server. I think it was Schizo, but oh god, I'm probably remembering that wrong. But either way, one of our viewers found this out, that if you type in the link and you just whisper it to someone, you can whisper it in a chat channel. If you don't have anyone to whisper to in the PTR, you just /join Trolls GG and just go in there and you type in battle.net//hero/98/Hanzo, and it'll create a link that you can click on, and it'll take you into like the hero preview panel where you can click on the try mode. And I took him out for a spin, and he's still as clunky as he was at BlizzCon, unfortunately. But if you do have an itching to try him in the PTR, that's the best way you can get him until next week. Again, that link there is in the show notes as well, in case you don't remember the battle.net//business. So next week, we're going to look more at Hanzo, his kits, and talk about him a bit more in depth with first impressions and such. But as he's not even on the PTR yet, like I said, we're going to leave that till next week.
He's not clickable anyway.
Yeah, exactly. You can put him in a try mode. You can look at his kit and stuff and maybe talk about it that way. I mean, we did have some playtime with him at BlizzCon, but we'll save that till next week. Survey about the PTR.
That's important. So Blizzard put out a survey about the stuff on the PTR. You need to fill that out if you care about this game at all. It doesn't take very long. I think it took me like 6 minutes.
So what's the survey generally say?
Questions about the build, now I don't remember. It was like last night sometime.
Just feedback, I guess.
Yeah, feedback. I'm sorry, feedback. They don't get a lot of feedback through the tool, right? So they get feedback using their tools to discover what you did in PTR, but they don't get like player-based feedback that often. So this is one of the things that you want to fill out so you can give them your feedback.
Cool. I didn't even know they had that, so I'll have to make sure I fill that out later today. We also had a blog post drop from Blizzard about performance-based matchmaking, which is going to hit the live servers along with this PTR patch. Now, I'm sure everyone's got a little bit to say about this, so maybe we'll spend a little bit of time on it. Let's start with you, Romedy. What do you think about the new performance-based MMR matchmaking system? Well, actually, you know what? Let's tee it up with what it is first, because maybe some people don't actually know what the changes are. So I'll just quickly explain, then we'll jump over to Romedy. So there you go, Romedy. I'll give you like a few seconds to actually come up with a response.
To prep yourself.
Yeah, you can prep it.
I appreciate that.
No problem. So basically, the performance-based matchmaking currently on live, if you lose a game, your MMR goes down. If you win a game, your MMR goes up. It's completely based, essentially, on wins and losses and like who your opponents were and who your teammates are and their respective MMRs. Now, going forward, as soon as this new system comes into place, it'll actually look at how you perform in the game with respect to, I'm going to say your peers. It seems like it's more like if you're in a similar game with a similar hero, how you perform compared to like other characters in that kind of similar situation. So if you're playing Illidan, how you do compared to other Illadins in like a losing game of a similar time length. And if you do better, you'll lose less MMR. And if you do worse, you'll lose more MMR in a loss. And conversely, in a win, you'll maybe, I would expect you to get higher MMR in a win where you're carrying the team. Whereas if you're carried, you'll get less out of it. So a lot of concerns have been raised about this new MMR performance-based matchmaking system. But yeah, Rami, what did you think when you first heard about this? What are your thoughts on performance-based MMR?
So the fact that the dynamic system I thought was really cool, that it's going to learn over time. I thought that was really neat. I wish that we had a little more weightings for going to go down. And I bring that up, and you mentioned Illidan Greymane was another one that came to my mind. But you can play Illidan, like if you have a Tassadar behind you, it plays different than if you have an Alexstrasza, And, if you're doing the split push thing, you're going to rack up a bunch of siege damage, but you're not going to be getting hero kills or hero damage. So someone who's playing it with, I don't know, it just seems really odd that you can play it heroes like 2 or 3 different ways. Even the builds that you use, the big debate last night was like Q build on Alexstrasza versus E build, right? So you're doing damage on one and you're healing output on the other. The weighting on that, that's why I wish we had more transparency in the weighting.
Yeah, I mean, transparency is a loaded word too, because if you tell,
I know.
if you let people know too much about how it's done, that's where gaming the
Right,
system
and then
comes into
yeah.
place.
Yep.
One thing that you mentioned there too that I thought was really interesting that I don't think they mentioned at BlizzCon is that it's going to be kind of like a learning system. In that blog post that they put up, a lot of it says like, you know, it will learn over time based on how players perform. It's not just, okay, you know, your siege damage numbers as Illidan or like, you know, kills and damage. It's based on other people's play. The thing is, we don't know what those X factors are. We don't know if like picking the right build will help you in certain situations, or who your teammates are in terms of what characters they take. That, you know, maybe it's empowering that Illidan. As you said, you've got Illidan, Tassadar, Abathur, like just going Illidan hyper carry. Obviously, you're going to get a lot more damage. You're going to be able to play a lot riskier. So is that going to be taken into account? So Mystic, what do you think about all this?
I'm really interested to see how it's gonna go. The only thing I'm kind of worried about is, so they said at BlizzCon that it's going to take into account like all the players and say like, okay, all these Illidan's did really good with these scores and stuff like that. You know, obviously transparency and whatnot. But so they're gonna base it off of that. And what I kind of don't like about it is that it's kind of meta conforming. So it's like you have to play kind of, or this is the hero that you chose, so you're gonna have to play it like almost this way almost, and that whether or not makes your score go higher or lower depending, you know, on your win or loss, right? And I don't know, I feel like personally it just limits freedom a little bit, but you know, that's just me.
So LiQuiud, do you think we're overthinking this?
So, Dunk Train had a really good point today on Town Hall Heroes, or maybe it was Bakery. I'm pretty sure it was Dunk though, and that was, this is going to encourage one trick. You already rise through the ranks if you pick a solid one trick, right? If you can play a mean Sonya, one trick Sonya. That happens to be my plan starting next week. If you can play, once I get used to this keyboard thing again, if you can play Genji, you can one-trick Genji for the most part, right? Like there's a couple of characters that you can seriously one-trick your way up. Maybe not Genji anymore. Genji used to be able to do that. Maybe not so much. But anyway, if you're one-tricking one character and you're always performing really well on that one character that you're one-tricking, your performance is always going to be good compared to the rest of the team, right? If I get into draft and I'm always constantly like showing Sonya right away and taking Sonya because I know I can play Sonya blindfolded, I'm going to have a good performance on Sonya 9 times out of 10. So not only am I going to one trick my way to raise my MMR and get higher in rank, but I'm also going to be performing well, which is going to give me higher bonus points for carrying my team.
What's new about that though? Isn't that how
nothing
a lot of people
at all
climb?
is new, right? Like nothing at all is new. If you're one tricking, it's just easier for you, and if you're not one tricking, it's a little bit harder. But I fully expect this system to help a lot of people that are stuck in MMR hell, because you'll lose less if you play well and you're just on a team of potatoes. You'll lose less points, right? Like you just will. If you're stuck with 4 people, 2 disconnects, and 2 people that just want to sit and rage at the core, and you take 3 camps, you've already done better than the rest of the team. You're going to lose less points. That's helpful when you're, you know, stuck in, you know, MMR hell. So I love the system. I can't wait to play on it and like have it rolled out.
The big thing that really got me excited was the learning part of it too. The fact that it's going to learn. I know that Blizzard a couple years ago, I believe at BlizzCon, they announced that like Google partnership with like dealing with the AI on StarCraft. I almost wonder if that is kind of filtering in here, because this just screams of neural network programming, right? In terms of like a learning system that will hopefully take all this data, which they're going to have a ton of, and they're going to be able to adapt it properly. I wouldn't even be surprised if it ends up getting smart enough that it can learn when people are trying to like quote unquote game the system and maybe even punish that.
Right.
Cool. Okay, so we're gonna move along to LiQiuD's eSports Corner.
Hey yo, how you doing? It's time for LiQiuD's eSports Corner. That's right. And you're gonna want to stick around for this.
Take it away, LiQuid.
You scroll down just a little bit. All right, so starting this week, we have the Gold Club World Championship. I always struggle with that, the GCWC. It's going to be 8 different teams competing over $300,000 in China, starting November 27th, which is Monday, rolling all the way through December 10th, roughly 2 weeks, a little more than that. They're going to have a group stage, then they're going to have a playoff stage. 8 teams participating, KSV eSports, or KSV Black, which used to be MVP Black, Ballistics, Fnatic, Dignitas, Roll20, Super Perfect Team, CE, and Beyond the Game. Now, Caldor did tweet earlier, and Bakery confirmed again today that all of the EU teams have their visas for China, so they should be there with their new rosters ready to go. I'm excited. This is going to be great. We have Grubby, Caldor, Dreadnought, and Gilly casting these games. So it's going to be awesome, and I can't wait to watch them. Time sucks because it's China. So, it's like middle of the night. So I'll probably be watching these as VODs when I get up in the morning, start it, and watch watch from then on. But yeah, I'm super excited about that. We'll finally see Super Perfect Team take the rightful place at the head of all of these international teams. I can't wait. Everybody thinks I'm crazy. I did say Roll20 will get top 4 here. But I think a Chinese team is going to surprise everybody. I want it to be SPT. I would be happy with CE or even Beyond the Game after their incredible run in Phase 2 doing well, but I think a Chinese team will surprise everybody.
So why are you saying that?
Because no Chinese team has appeared outside of China for like the last 3 years.
They've been holding their secret close to the vest.
They just can't get
the visa
can't get what they need, right? To get into play. And I think everybody's been so focused on can NA beat Korea? Can EU beat Korea? That China is going to come out and be like, what's up? We're here now. I'm hopeful. Look. The reality is it's probably not going to go that way. The reality is KSV is probably going to win. Fnatic or Dig's probably getting second or third. Roll20 is going to get into the top 4. And then there's room for like SPT or CE in there somewhere. I don't think Ballistics is going to get in the top 4. I think they're probably going to get knocked out a little early. But we'll see. We'll also see if so nobody's said anything about Korean roster apocalypse yet, or China. And we know that they had to have their changes in, but if you remember back between Phase 1 and Phase 2, Korea just basically came out and said, these are our changes. Like one day, out of the blue, it was tweeted and it was like, boom, here's all the roster changes. There was none of the stuff that we've seen in NA or EU. It was just like, here you go. And like the owners get together, they do all their trades, and then they just hand someone a piece of paper. Go report on this. And it's like all the changes. So in theory, we'll see if KSV or Ballistics has made any changes, or if SPT, CE, and Beyond the Game have made any changes. On, I think the 27th and 28th are the games where we see both of those teams. So I'm excited. It's something to talk about during the HGC downtime that we have right now, which really isn't downtime with roster apocalypse.
Yeah, I mean, did you want it addressing the roster apocalypse stuff? There's quite a bit that happened.
Here's what I'm going to say about roster apocalypse. Your best bet, because it would take us all night to go through that stuff at this point, is to go watch the VOD that we recorded Monday night for Troll and HGC, either on Twitch so you get the chat, or on YouTube. Either one is good. We cover all of the roster apocalypse news from NA, EU. Obviously, there's nothing we can talk about in Korea and China, but we also get into like why Glaurung left, which is apparently like a hot topic that everybody wanted to know about.
I guess Korea is just delaying it so that they know they're like, hey, we'll give NA and EU their time, and then for Troll and HGC, we'll give them an extra week so they have something else to talk about next week.
Honestly, I suspect what's happening is I think everybody had to get their rosters to Blizzard yesterday. Blizzard has to bless all those rosters. Now, if you look at what Korea did in Phase 2, all the rosters came out the day after the final trading day happened. So if they're following form, yesterday, Korea and China probably sent their rosters to Blizzard, and now Blizzard has to approve those rosters, and then announcements will be made. So that's probably all that's going on right now.
Hey, well, stay tuned for those.
Also, okay, it's completely separate. Don't confuse this with the Nexus games. Oh, wait, no. I got to do the Nexus games first. Wow. I'm totally skipping like a whole section. All right, so the Nexus games Europe, group play is over. This weekend, we do have the playoffs. They are single elimination, best of 5. It's basically an EU Amateur World Cup style tournament. Really, really awesome. Playoffs this weekend, like I said, we have France versus Hungary, Sweden versus Netherlands. That's the top portion of the bracket. And then the bottom portion of the bracket, we have Poland versus Russia and Germany versus Italy. Germany is playing with some subs, and Caldor said that Germany is even playing with the B string already on Monday night's show and chat. So, but he still feels strong about Germany. Poland versus Russia should be a good game. We'll see if Germany beats Italy, and if so, if they can get by Russia. I think it's going to be Russia-Sweden in the finals, but we'll see how that goes. They've been good games to watch so far. Kendrick, Tetcher, and Bakery doing the casting for those games. It's been a lot of fun to watch on the Blizz Hero site. And then, not to be confused with the EU Nexus games, the Nexus Gaming Series here in NA is an amateur series that is also wrapping up. Division B and C finished and crowned their winners. In Division C, we had Duratan's Couch beating All for Waifu. In Division B, we had Alaska beating Order of the Sleeping Dragon. And then in Division A this weekend, we have Team Cynics versus TMG Red. So those should be good games too. Personally, I think Cynics is odds-on favorite to beat Red, but we'll have to see how that goes.
You know what's really sad is when teams get sponsored, they lose these great names. Like Murloc Geniuses, All for Waifu. like those are great names. You gotta love some of the names these people come up with.
So at one point Monday night, all I could hear while I was going through this was Trent laughing and saying, I love amateur team names.
They are pretty amazing. So how is Bakery as a caster? I didn't get a chance to see him in that role, but you got to see some of his cast games this weekend.
LiQuiud
gonna set the internet on fire.
Bakery is a cool guy, and I like Bakery, okay? So I want to preface this by saying Bakery is a cool guy, and I like him. I don't feel like he's struggling to settle into the caster role. I think if you look at what happened, if you look at Dreadnought and his path to being a caster, he went through a lot of little things before he jumped into like HGC, right? And Bakery went from I'm a player to I'm casting the Nexus games. And there was no like in between there for him. So I think it's just, I mean, granted, he does a podcast every week, but the podcast is different. As a person who has cast games and as a person who does a podcast, there are two completely different things. The only thing similar is you're using OBS or some system like that. You have a microphone and you have a camera. Like there are like some similarities, but there are two completely different things. And he's just not quite, he hasn't hit that,
Is that why you've never invited me to cast with you?
No, I just don't cast anymore, man. I have found my home in podcasting and talking about esports. So I just don't have time to cast because like if I'm not playing and I'm not doing something around the show, trying to improve it, I'm like that means I'm probably unplugged away from the computer, honestly. Because I'm either working on the show, or I'm not at my computer. Like that's literally what I've gotten down to. So yeah, no, man, I would. Why are you gonna throw me under the bus like that?
It took you like 30 seconds to get to that.
Hey,
Right?
way back in the day, LiQuiud would kill, get resets, and kill again to get onto the HGC casting desk. Like,
yes.
Back in his streaming days.
Yes, 100%. I absolutely would have, and I don't know. I like casting is awesome. Don't get me wrong. Like without casters, I wouldn't know half of the stuff that's going on, and I love casting. I feel like I need to share an opinion more than I need to call what's going on in a game. So that's like that doesn't work as a caster, right? Like it's not opinion. There's some opinion. This team won the draft. This dude should have gone this talent instead. It's not the same though. I want to be able to sit back and like look at I want to
be the desk analyst type.
Yes.
There you go.
Or if you think about it, right? If you think about casting as the micro game, I want to play the macro game.
There you go.
right? Like, there you go, man.
Well played, LiQuiud. Well played.
So, a kind of an extension of our discussion about esports, LiQuiud's esports corner. Like I said off the top of the show, there's a reason we've got a sports psychologist on the show with us today. Hot topic today with all this roster apocalypse stuff happening. We really wanted to bring someone on who might be able to talk a little bit more about team dynamic. There's been a lot of debate, at least I've been debating with a lot of people, whether or not it's warranted. A lot of people look at this whole like roster swap and be like, well, shouldn't teams start looking within to improve as opposed to like just being so quick to pull the trigger and switch teams? Because like who's to say that, you know, you're going to get along with that other team that you're looking at down the road? So, Romedy, what is your take on all this roster apocalypse stuff? And do you think that teams are approaching it in the right manner?
So one, unfair question. Two, how much time do we have?
we got a lot of time. You start talking,
need, my friend.
I think that what we're seeing right now is a function of not having a model for what they're doing. I mean, I know that there's history like with League of Legends, with Dota, you know, even WoW to an extent. Like there's this how you are supposed to handle the rosters, but they've been based on like how traditional sports models work, right? So for like Major League Baseball seems like a really appropriate model that we're trying to use to play off of. And what you just alluded to a little bit ago, look at about the Korean thing. The owners get together, which is exactly like Major League Baseball. They talk about what trades, what players they want to have, and then they go to the player and say, sorry, but we traded you. And then the players go to those other teams. Like that's the model that we're operating under. And in some ways, like that's the best we can do because it's what we have. And in some ways it absolutely works. And then there's other aspects of it that I think are just woefully inappropriate. So is it the right thing to do? We don't know. We're trying to figure out as we go, but I certainly think we can dive into aspects of it that are working and aspects that aren't working.
So you just gave me the follow-up question. What aspects are working and which ones aren't? Like what do you see here, and where do you think that people should be looking for these changes to improve their teams?
Well, I think one of the most impactful things, and it's Bakery said it, Dunk said it, Caldor has said it, you know, multiple people have said this. You know, it's really difficult to pull the curtain back, right, to see what's going on behind the scenes. We have a year of HGC now. And what that implies is that we have a year of really solid statistics that we haven't previously had. And even within that, like we see them on individual patches and then we see them change after that patch comes out and how we adapt and how the meta shifts. So what the teams are telling us is that they've been able to kind of pick out what people are doing well on what roles and what people are not doing well on what roles. And so we can't lose that kind of in the flow here, is that a lot of these decisions are being made with data behind them to back them up. And so this might be the first time where that's really going on. And so it could be an ancient critique to say, well, they're just changing it too quick. This might be that first time in Heroes where we're really looking at it and saying, no, this is the right decision to make. And then from the looking within perspective, you know, we don't see on this side of the computer screen, we don't see the day in and day out practice that goes on. We don't see the hours that these people put in, both in Hero League and also Team League behind the scenes. You know, we don't see the scrimming and the thoughts that go into it and the replay analysis and all of that. Well, from my perspective, early on, before maybe you're even halfway through the first part of HGC, you might have a good idea of what people you work with and what people you don't work with. And to quote from the trolling podcast last night, you know, we were talking about, I think it was Casanova, and how he's got a very direct way of providing feedback. And that could be a really good thing because you know where he stands, but it can be a really bad thing because you might get put in a corner where you feel like nothing you do is ever good enough for him. So from that respect, from that aspect, I don't think teams do a very good job on actually working with and changing kind of the interpersonal, and that's a big psychology word, I know, interpersonal. So the way we act within each other, right? Like how I act with LiQuiud, how I would act with Mystic. I don't think we put an emphasis on changing or adapting how we do that. There's this emphasis on shot calling, and to a lesser extent, there's this emphasis on communication. But it's pretty much, here's who I am, let's play the game. If you don't like me, I'll find another place to be because I trust in my ability. And if you think about it, that's the traditional sports model. That's exactly how it's been set up. And so that's one of those things where I think it's woefully inappropriate. It doesn't quite work that way, I don't think.
So on these teams, like you've got skills, you've got, certain players who might perform well in certain skills in an isolated sense. And like you're saying, people have got personalities and their interpersonal skills with each other and how their dynamic is a big part of whether the team will mesh together. Is there a case where you can work on that, or you think teams should work on that? Do you think there's places that like systems that teams can put in place to help them work on those interpersonal skills to make the team mesh a bit better?
And this is going to be a radical idea, and depending on where you are, right, kind of in your life, or even area of the country you're from, what your life experience has taught you, this is either going to be an idea that I put out that you say, oh God, that makes a lot of sense, or you're like, okay, that guy's an idiot. And I don't know how much middle ground there is here. Teams focus so much on that individual improvement. And again, I'm going to preface this with, we cannot pull the curtain back. We don't see what's going on. From any knowledge that I have, this does not happen. We grind Hero League and we pound our head into Hero League, and then we go into scrims and we pound our head into scrims, and then we go into analysis and we pound our head into analysis to prove mechanical skill. I'm going to go out and say that if you're a pro player, you have good mechanical skill, like superior mechanical skill, right? What we're not doing is focusing on how we interact with one another. And it's a very psychology and it's a touchy-feely thing. Here's the radical idea. If LiQuiuD has a way of communicating to me that I find abrasive and that I find really interferes with my ability to perform in the future, how is that going to change if I don't tell him? So we don't sit down and talk about that kind of stuff in a constructive, kind of a moderated fashion. That aspect right there, if we think about it, it builds and builds and builds and builds, and then there's a day where LiQuiuD goes, okay, Romedy, what I needed you to do was be here at this camp 3 seconds earlier. And I'm just like, I'm done. I can't handle this right now, LiQuiuD. Right. I cannot handle you doing this. And that was a polite way to say it. I'm not trying to put mean words in LiQuiuD's mouth here, right?
Well, I'm taking notes. I'm taking
notes.
notes.
That's about right. I do want to add one thing. Yipos in chat pointed out it was Prismat, not Casanova, that we were talking about.
Appreciate the correction. Thank you.
Anyway, continue.
Yeah,
sorry.
So not to be rude to Casanova inadvertently. My apologies. But I mean, taking an hour or 90 minutes out of your day once a week to sit down and just reflect on, in psychology we call it the process. It's not the content. Content and process are different things. The content is banging your head into Hero League, banging your head into scrims, banging your head into analysis. That's the content. If you go back and you step back and process it for 60 to 90 minutes per week with someone who really knows what they're doing, then you can absolutely work on these interpersonal presentations. And those realizations can be really uncomfortable to have, right? If I give LiQuiuD that feedback and say, when you tell me, hey, you're an idiot for not being there, then I don't perform well the next time because I'm not just playing the game. I'm thinking, well, what does LiQuiuD need me to do here? So, working on how that communication style works and transpires is, I think, really effective here. That's kind of like a down the road team. Like, this is for pro teams who know what they're doing, right? Like, if we're going to talk amateur teams, just for frame of reference here, that's like 10 or 15 steps down the path. Amateur teams are primarily, I'm getting off on a tangent, sorry, Daz. Amateur teams are they may have played some team league with their friends, right? They get in chat and they're just who they are, right? Or you play in Hero League, which my opinion is that Hero League actively discourages a lot of the traits that you need in a successful team. So when you put those 5 people together for the first time in the amateur scene, they maybe don't know how to communicate. Even simple things like, I'm Muradin, I'm looking to stun Medic, right? I'm looking, or ETC looking to slide on Tronda, whoever it is, right? So just those basic communication things, I think, get lost in the amateur scene. And over time they develop, but they don't develop as rapidly, I think, as they could. And part of that is, it's not, I don't think, a mechanical skill gap. I think it's the way the team operates is why we're seeing the gaps between amateur and pro teams more often than not.
I've got so many questions already. I've got
All
questions
right,
from like
let's do it.
4 minutes ago. I've got questions from stuff you were talking about there. So just talking about the potential difficulty with holding stuff in, and that like not getting things off your chest, I guess, is probably the easiest way to put it that you were talking about before. There's been a lot of discussion, and a lot of people have talked about the pros and cons to having like a coach. Is this a place where a coach can be a good facilitator? Because I remember myself when I was in my early 20s, and like I probably, if I wasn't a professional esports athlete that thought I knew all I needed to know, I probably wouldn't think a coach was necessary. If someone said, okay, you need like someone to help like manage these interpersonal relationships, I'd be like, get away. Like I can do this. We're adults. We can handle this ourselves. Like, do you think that like a coach can help facilitate this kind of almost like mediation, or like helping people open up as like almost like a middleman?
The answer to this requires us to back up just a little bit.
Okay.
There's a Freudian word, and I can't think of the word right now for that experience of holding everything in and then just letting it out in this large burst. And I can't say. And a quick note there is that Freud was a wackadoodle, and he got a ton of stuff wrong. But given that he's working from nothing, he got a surprising amount of stuff right. A lot of our just everyday jargon that we use for psychology is really rooted in Freud. So a lot of that, therefore, is wrong. And that explosion, that getting everything off of your chest, I can't think of the word. There's a lot of research to show that is not an effective way to handle that stuff. It's actually really destructive. And this leads into a different topic, a strong emotion, which we don't have to get into. But the short answer is physiologically, that affects you. Like in your brain area place, that affects you in a really negative way when you have that strong emotion. So the reason I said we had to back up is developmentally, we know that I'm going to just talk in general about men for a moment here, because a vast majority of our esports players are men. Developmentally, your brain as a male is not fully complete in this area right behind your forehead until the age of 27-ish, maybe. And I mean, this is not for individuals, right? Some can develop more quickly, some can develop later. If you're like me, it didn't fill in until your early 30s because reasons, right? Anyway, what that suggests is if you're an esports player in your early 20s, you actually struggle with those interpersonal, with those social communication things, if you have not actively worked on them in your life. And I don't want to play the gamer stereotype, right? But if we play that gamer stereotype, that might be a place that they struggle because they haven't necessarily worked on that stuff. So not only do you have this physiological barrier of not, this is called your prefrontal cortex, it's not totally filled in yet, but you may not have a lot of that social skill behind the way. And there's a really interesting article from a guy at Stanford. I cannot say his name right now either, so sorry. Anyway, but his research basically suggests those two things are linked in some way, that the development there and then the lack of social skills. So yes, short answer, a coach helps. But the coach also has to have some knowledge into that area, into that stuff, right? And then there's also, and it's a really valid critique, the players have to buy in. If you just bring a coach in and you're just like, oh, hey, here's this psychology dude, and all 5 of the players are really anti-psychology, it's not going to help. I've been really lucky with LiQuid and Redian and Woven and all the folks over on ODI from day one. I feel like they have treated me with a lot of respect, reverence almost. They've bought into it. They've allowed me to really do the thing that I wanted to do with them, and I feel like it shows within that team.
Yeah, one thing I was surprised by, and maybe LiQuid, who follows the scene a bit more closely than I, wasn't nearly as surprised by, was Fnatic breaking up. To me, I looked at that. It looked like, in all the little bio videos and things they had a pretty, tight-knit group. And they, like, even them, who seemed to be, more of a sum than a sum of their parts because they seemed to get along well, ended up making roster changes. Now, one thing that I thought was interesting was Caldor in chat. You like that name drop? Yeah. Yep. Troll HEC. He was defending Fnatic versus Dig and saying, yeah, Fnatic may look not as strong on paper, but they've got more drive, I believe was what, I'm paraphrasing a little bit.
100%, yes.
And that to me is like, okay, well, maybe they're not necessarily looking at improving just the pure mechanics, but they're looking at the team dynamic and being like, we want that hunger, everyone that's on the same page. I also remember, I can't remember who it was, talking about Fan. Oh, it was Cavalier Guest. He was on the show, talking about Fan and saying that on like when Fan feels like it's going to be a tough match, he performs better than when he thinks it's going to be an easy match, right? So there's all these like X factors that you don't really think about that you might not even see performance wise until you actually get to know the people and the personalities. So maybe, like in Fnatic's case, they're looking towards that as opposed to just improving like their pure raw skill and trying to get a team that gels really well together.
Short answer is yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head.
I don't even know if I asked a question there.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think you're right. With Fnatic, it could be as simple as they collectively decided that we cannot improve any further. This is the best we're ever going to be, and it was not good enough to beat MVP Black.
Well, and like somebody in chat was like, well, what reason would you have for that? And someone else in chat was like, well, about 300,000 reasons, right? Like that, legitimately, that's what happened. You
Right.
finished second place, you got 200 grand. You finished first place, you got $500,000. That's
Right.
a big deal. If your team's not going to be, if you've plateaued and you can't, no matter what the reason is, maybe it's, I don't want to work 12 hours a day. I only want to work 8 hours a day. Okay, well, this dude over here wants to work 12 hours a day and $300,000 is important to us. We're going to get this dude. Like that's right. Like that happens.
I mean, I think it's something not to get lost there too is, I mean, you can be incredibly close friends and not work well together, right? You really, to me, what that really, so here we're going to go way off the sport deep end into Fnatic real quick. What that tells me is that at some point in the team, we can reasonably expect that there is a trio of people who wanted to play the game the same way and a duo, two people who wanted to play the game the same way. And forever, I'm not to name drop, but Quacknix is the one who I really think drove what that team did with respect to their playstyle. It was a macro playstyle. Well, MVP Black punished that macro playstyle over and over and over again. And we can't get lost at the midseason brawl. It was Dignitas that took out MVP Black because Dignitas excelled at the team fight, where Fnatic knew how to beat Dignitas in the map from the macro perspective. So that 3-2 split with Fnatic, the decision could have been, in order to win, we have to change our style. The three people said we're not willing to change how we play the game, and there you have the roster breakup. I mean, it could be that simple.
Well, that's kind of a good transition, because when we're talking about a majority and minority and a team of 5, that actually works really well in our discussion of Hero League as well, or Team League, I guess, specifically. So let's filter a little bit away from the esports scene and into just our everyday Joes' lives, and maybe can you comment a little bit more about just what challenges kind of arise? We can start with Team League with duo versus trio queuing, and maybe like what you should be considering going in to try and advance your performance in terms of like a psychology standpoint, because a lot of cases, one thing that everyone has come across, be like, someone's pinging boss, you're like, that's the wrong move.
That's the wrong call.
I'm not going there, because even though the other guys are going there, because I think that's the wrong move. So obviously there's some point where maybe the right move is making the wrong decision. But anyways, do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Sure. Love to. So the example you gave there is great, because it's a prime example of where we can flip it around. If you go to the boss, even if you believe it's the wrong decision, and in my view, oftentimes I see people going boss and I'm like, we should have done this 20 seconds ago. They're now going to be up. They're going to know right where we are. Here they come, right? You know it. If you're not there, that is a 5v4 fight. Your team is probably going to lose 5v4 and they're going to get the boss. If you go to the boss, even if it's the wrong choice, and it is a 5v5 fight, you have a better chance, statistically, of still capping the boss, winning that fight, and getting the objective you wanted. Whereas if you just go off and do your own thing, you're almost guaranteed that's not going to work. So from that angle, going with what the majority decision is oftentimes what you want to do. Here's the other thing I have with that. If pinging the boss is the wrong move, why have you not pinged something else? Not to totally just flip it around, but it seems like a reasonable thing to ask. Okay, so here's the thing about 5 people. If you have a group of 5 folks, research in team psychology says 2 opinions are very, very like an overwhelming majority of the time, 2 opinions are likely to exist. Meaning, I think one person thinks the boss is the right call, and that's probably LiQuiud. I think that the right call is to let them do whatever they want and go somewhere else on the map, right? Just not be a boss, like literally anything else. Well, I'm guaranteed in a group of 5 that somebody, probably Mystic, shares my opinion, and somebody, probably Daz, shares LiQuid's
Whoa,
opinion.
whoa.
Wait.
I'm with Mystic and Romedy here. LiQuid, you're on your own.
Why is everybody hating on me? All right. You 3 can be against me. That's fine.
If you're the duo queue, right? If you're the 2 people who have queued for Team League, it's pretty reasonable to assume that the other 3 people on your team will be thinking the same thing, whether they're in voice chat or they've played together a lot or they're communicating more effectively or efficiently than the 2 of you have, right? So if you're the duo queue in Team League, like just a simple question like, what would you like us to play? What roles do we need? What is it you want us to do? In draft can go a long way to just building at least a little bit of support within those Team League games, and generally will make your life a better place. Now, before you say it, yes, there's going to be people who just turn around and flame you, right? It's going to happen. It's Hero League. I'm sorry. That's the thing. More often than not, you're more likely to build the support, even with those individuals, simply by reaching out, right? If you're on the duo and you just immediately snap pick Nova Zero Tool, you are the problem. You need to not do that. Okay. And here's, so it just in gameplay itself, right? If you're the duo, you know, a lot of maps exist in this 1-4 split. Like we have a solo laner and then there's other people off in a 4-mana rotation, a dual lane, whatever it is, right? You've got to go along with what those 3 people are wanting to do right there. Like if you need to be off doing mercs, then you're the one, you're the minority, right? Ping that stuff. Let people know where you're going. Let them know what you're doing. This is the biggest piece of feedback right here, though. Your decision is not the only right decision. In HOTS, very rarely is there a single right choice. That single right choice looks like we just wiped everybody in the middle of the map, a 5-0 wipe at level 22, and we have 65 seconds to go to the core and kill it. Easy choice.
Oh my God. No.
Right?
You would think
Easy
that,
choice.
right? Then they're like, oh, let's get all the camps.
No. That's
Like, what?
That's the one place where there is an objective right choice. Right? At level 7, where you're on Tomb and you don't have enough gems for a turn-in and you're just roaming around, there are multiple choices that are the right choice at any given time, and they're equally right. You can do multiple different things. So this idea that you have the right choice has got to go out the window. You've got to understand that everybody else could be as equally right as you are, and that in the team set, and HOTS is one of the ultimate team games right now. Whatever the majority of people, the 3 people on their team are doing, even if it's wrong, that's the right choice. And you've got to go with them.
Now, how does this flex over to, say, like a Hero League situation where there is no duo or trio queue, or even, you know, just a situation where you're in quick match by yourself? Everyone, assumedly, might not be queued up together in some of these situations. So, like, in that case, how do you identify the majority or the minority? I guess that's probably dynamic over the course of the game, too, even.
Very much. God, we don't have enough time to get into that, because that's a compositional thing. It's who do you have? Is it are you playing a macro game? It's like, what is the choice, right? It's even like, what is your rank? Because my experience just grinding up through bronze and silver, if I played macro level heroes, you could just win the game strictly through macro pressure. Gold, plat, that's not the way it necessarily works. So the team fight emphasis really starts to show in high gold and then through platinum and above, right? Because everybody can do the macro game at that setting is basically the feedback. God, there's just not. It's hard to say communication. I know we're going to get into this, and maybe this is the logical point. There's been like a polarizing thing about voice comms, right? If used the right way, your experience, I think, in those ranked drafts is going to be vastly improved. Like if you actually get 5 people in there who want to win and compete and try hard, it's really going to improve what you're going to do. I think where you're going to notice a major drop off is when you get that one person who doesn't care, who is intentionally trolling you. And even with that, I think if we just straight play the research, instances of that will exist, but they ought to be fewer than they are right now. When you can talk verbally to somebody, there's more repercussions for your actions versus right now where there's no verbal and I can just turn off chat and I literally don't have to deal with you at all, right? And to just summarize the research on it real fast, you don't troll people in person, because they can punch you in the face if you do it, right? That's why we don't do that. Over the phone, which is essentially the same thing as voice comms, it's more frequent. Like as kids, at least growing up when I did, you would crank call people. Now that was before caller ID because I'm old AF, but that's okay. I mean, it doesn't happen so much anymore, but you can still, like over voice comms, troll if you're willing to just let all the words they say just roll off your back. There's no accountability in a social sense when you're just typing. So that's why for me, just the implementation of voice comms is absolutely necessary. It has to happen. It's not going to solve all the problems, but it's a great step forward.
Yeah. So do you think that communication in the game from a team point perspective has been lacking up to this point with just straight up pinging and voice and just typing chat?
100%. Well, and it's not the communication is lacking. It's the improvement of it. It's the rapidity with which you can communicate right now. When your decisions have to be made in a split second, I mean, literally, it's a microsecond decision, say, to use sanctification. And I'm going to give a great example. I got off of watching a lot of Korean HTC games, and I went into Quick Match, and I was on Tyrael, who is one of my very favorite heroes of all time since Alpha. And I was taking this thing that G. Clef had said. He was like, a good Tyrael is going to sanct where your Greymane or Illidan is going to end up. So I went into Quick Match thinking, oh my God, I think my Greymane's going to dive in. Let's sanct right here. And then the number of times that anybody actually dove in, bagel. And people in chat were just like, dude, learn to play Tyrael. You can't sanct don't get off that hero. What are you doing? They couldn't read my mind, right? And this is where voice comms are going to come in and help, because you don't have to now try to mind read, which is necessarily an error. I can say, hey, medic is out of position, queuing to her, sancting so you can blow her up. I mean, and that's really wordy and that's not good communication, but in essence, that's what we're enabling, right?
Yeah. And speaking from experience being on an amateur chair league team for several seasons, I think there's going to be a big learning curve to the voice communications as well. Most people have played, assuming the vast majority probably doesn't use voice comms in any sense. So getting used to talking about what you're doing is a bit of a learning curve. And throughout the different teams that I've been on over the past couple of years, like you'll get people that are really good at communicating and saying what they're doing, and then you'll have people that are completely silent too. So I think that it's going to be a very new a new skill to learn for a lot of people too, and a bit of an adaptation of their play just in general, and how they're verbally communicating as soon as voice comms does come in, which we don't have a time frame on that. I was kind of expecting maybe that might be something that trickles through this initial patch here, but I'm guessing it's probably going to be in the new year sometime.
They got some pushback.
Well, Twitter for like a week.
Noticed or not?
That's all you heard about.
Right? It was like that was Twitter. So I think that's one of the reasons why they are delaying it, is they're trying to figure out, when should we actually roll this out, and should we change some of the systems we have in the back end for reporting?
That's the big one, I think, is the reporting piece.
Right.
Because you're going to get people who in voice comms communicate the way they type. And that's really unfortunate. And those people need to have some kind of repercussion to it. And that's the easy example, but I agree with you. There's got to be a better reporting.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm assuming they're going to be recording all these conversations too. So they'll have the history of the chat, not just the chat history, but the voice comms history to go on too. And it's a little bit easier. Like things can get miscommunicated too, I feel like, just in chat. So it's a whole texting problem, right? Like you lose the tone. You can say one sentence in two completely different ways, and they can be misinterpreted completely differently. Well, now that you've got tone involved with actual voice communication, being sarcastic or facetious can be completely different than being like something serious or trying to flame somebody.
Well, we're assuming that they're going to record it. Hopefully they will. We'll see.
Yes.
I mean, this could be a piece of the learning stuff too. Like they maybe are just looking for keywords, right? As the voice just comes in, they're just scanning for any, name a curse word.
Yeah. Well, I imagine in really severe situations that, and they might have someone review. And I imagine that, like, we're all talking about reporting, like you can actually get more severe bans if you're, being verbally abusive to someone in the game. That to me is not just, we're going to silence you for a couple of days. That might be something that justifies a straight out ban from Heroes of the Storms, just period. Obviously, it's easy enough to get around that, but you lose all your heroes, all the experience and everything too. It's a pretty significant ban. Okay, I hate to savor this, but we're going to move on. We're definitely have to have you back on, Romedy, because there's so much more we could talk about here. I feel like maybe we should just break this off and do a branch podcast or something, sports psychology with Romedy. But for today, we've got the PTR to talk about, and we also want to get into our debate too. So we're just going to move along for now. So the PTR patch dropped on the 20th. There's quite a few changes in here. We are going to split this up over the course of 2 shows. And we're going to talk about the stealth changes to all the stealth heroes next week to give us something to talk about next week, but also we just don't have enough time to go over it all today in depth in the way that we want to. So we're just going to go over kind of all the bullet points here and just talk about some. We're going to breeze over some because we've talked about them in previous shows, and just how they might affect everyone's game once it gets into the live server. So first off, we've talked about this in the past too. The in-game camera height increase is in the PTR patch. Mystic, are you noticing it more? Have you played much in the PTR to see that? I mean, we played with the camera height at BlizzCon too. Do you think this is going to impact people's game in general?
I think it will impact the information output, right? Because the screen, it's zoomed out, so you have to take in more information. And personally, I think people with bigger screens will have a bit of a harder time because, you have to look in a lot of different places, whereas people with smaller screens will have a little bit more of an advantage. But I think overall it's better for the game because you can see more, and then, you can react more because you can see that Li Ming firing that orb at you from a screen's length away, and now you can also see that Chromie as well.
I can see the entire lane. It is awesome.
Well, you've got an ultra-wide monitor too, so you're cheating.
It is so great. Oh my god, I can't even explain. It's so awesome.
I've actually started looking into an ultra-wide monitor too, just as soon as they announced this. I was like, maybe it's time, so I can see even more now too with the expanded camera. So Battleground objective timings, we knew these were coming. They've given us more details. So I'm just going to go over some of these here. 90-second activation following a 30-second warning for Blackheart's Bay, Braxis, and Dragonshire. For Blackheart's Bay, after the chests have been cleared, 3 minutes later, you'll get another set of chests. Braxis Holdout, 2 minutes and 10 seconds for some reason. After the final Zerg is dead, you will get the next objective spawning. Dragonshire, 2 minutes after the Dragonite is killed. These are taking the element of chance out of it a little bit here, making things a bit more predictable. For Battlefield Attorney, Cursed Hollow, Garden of Terror, Haunted Mines, and Infernal Shrines, we've got a 3-minute activation following a 30-second warning. So again, we got more time now to get to those curses or those or the tribs, and it's happening at a very predictable time. Tomb of the Spire Queen and Volsky Industries are not changed. And then Cursed Hollow, Infernal Shrine, Sky Temple, Towers of Doom, and Warhead Junction have an interesting change to them too. And this was what I think is actually one of the biggest things coming out of this, is the mini-map will now show the objective location. So it'll actually show you where the trib's going to spawn 30 seconds after the game begins. Subsequent ones, so after that trib has been captured, or shrine or whatever it happens to be, between 15 to 30 seconds after the previous phase is done, it depends on the map, I'm not going to go into the specifics there, it will show again where the next one's going to be. So you're now going to know on Cursed Hollow exactly where it's going to spawn. So this is a big implication, I think, in lane assignments between objectives and mercenary timings.
This is the greatest change in the world. I love this change. I want to point out one thing, though. Volskaya is unchanged because Volskaya was rolled out this way. Volskaya was the test bed for we want predictable objectives, right? That they announced they were working on predictable objectives when they released Volskaya for the rest of the maps. I had an interesting conversation with Radiant last night. No, today. Last night. I don't know. Recently. Let's just say recently. In the last 2 days. About this and about how this makes the macro game even more important, but it makes it so that you can practice the macro game reliably, because things are always going to happen the same way every time now, within reason, right? Where currently, like Cursed Hollow, I think it's 1.5 to 3 minutes after the last curse, or that's too long. Anyway, there's like a time frame, right? And it's a range instead of it will always happen at this period of time. It will, it's always going to be this. That's helpful in that now you can say, okay, I know I have to get these camps at this time. Like, the macro becomes predictable, which means you can practice it, which means if you're not practicing the macro game, you're easily beaten. Or you're out macroed at least, right?
Where I think this is particularly interesting too is a map like Cursed Hollow, because it's pretty, known strategy that at 2 minutes, when we'll get to spawn timers on Mercs in a bit, but at 2 minutes you'd go and you do your siege giants, and you'd assume, or is this the siege giants? The siege giants. Anyways,
siege giants.
And you take them so that it times with the first objective. Now, one of the big things was objective can spawn on the top or the bottom, because that's a big advantage if it spawns on the opposite side of the siege lane that you've cleared out, because your siege minions can now be pushing and are less easily cleared, and therefore you've got that advantage at the first objective. Now you know where that objective's going to spawn. You might be able to make the decision, like, maybe I don't want to take our siege camp, maybe we want to infiltrate their siege camp, or be a bit more aggressive about what lanes we go into to make sure that we can more quickly respond to how these siege giants are going to be coming down the lanes. So what do you guys see any other implications here this might lead to? I mean, one tip that I was thinking too, I think it might have been Mystic that pointed this out several shows back, is you could actually enable chat timers, like timestamps into your chat log. So one thing you can do is, when an objective is done, you just type in chat done, and you'll have that timestamp that you can always go back on in your chat history and see what time that last shot was fired in the temple, or when the last tribute was taken. So it's a little bit easier to do the math, and you don't have to rely on your memory to know when the next tribute or whatever is going to spawn.
Something I don't really think we've talked about all that much, but like on Cursed, I think it's going to start to enable, like if you take some divey type stuff, like for instance, like a Brightwing bomb, right? And infiltrating, because if it's going to spawn on the top lane, if you're on the left side, you don't want to take your siege because it's not going to get any value. You can reliably expect your opponent to be at the siege though. So I think this new tactic of using globals instead of the defensive way, but more in this offensive way, might start to emerge, because folks are going to go to their siege giants when they're advantageous, not when they're disadvantageous. So
yeah,
Infernal might work the same way.
There's a really good point there. Like, because you're increasing the predictability of the tribute, or not tributes, just objectives, you're potentially increasing predictability of how your opponents are going to react, because the information that they know. So it's a little bit easier to tell how they might react to that, having that information, as opposed to the unpredictability of like not knowing where the next objective is going to spawn. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about too is the regen globes have changed on the PTR. Now, they've actually changed since BlizzCon 2. I believe it was 4 seconds as a standard globe. Then after those 4 seconds, it would turn for another 4 seconds into a neutral globe that either team could take. Now it's 3 and 3 seconds. So those globes are expiring after 6 seconds. So you've got a little bit less time to actually take them. And as soon as that globe drops, it's already doing that fast blinking, because it's going to turn into the neutral globe very shortly. So you don't have much time to get that globe before it becomes a contestable globe. So Mystic, do you think how's laning going to change with these neutral regen globes? Because I mean, I had some regen globe taking quests in the PTR today, and I felt like it was a little bit easier to get globes if you're actively pushing to contest them.
Mm-hmm. Well, it definitely does affect those quests. It just means that controlling your lane is that much important. You have to control better where the wizard dies. So, you can contest the globe, or have it be more advantageous towards your side so you can collect it easier, or have, just control where the wizard dies. And then if you're winning the lane, it just means you win that much harder, because it means that if they don't position the wizard where the wizard dies correctly, then, well, they're out of a regen globe and you have 2 regen globes, which is, double the regen. That's quite a bit of regen. That's a lot of advantage to win the lane with.
So now is there even, we're going to get into this in a second, but the structures no longer have a limited amount of ammo. So having minions push into your forts, as long as they're not doing a lot of damage on your forts, doesn't have as much advantage as it used to. So this, combined with the fact that you can potentially get access to twice as many globes as you had before, is this going to change? Maybe people are going to be a bit more passive in lane even too, just to sit back in lane. If they've got a poor lane matchup, they can grab both globes. They can have the towers help them out a bit. They can still soak the XP safely, not have to worry about losing that damage to the structures that they typically would have to worry about when the towers run out of ammo, for instance.
That's correct. It means if you're losing the lane, then you can totally just sit behind your wall and just be like, okay, my walls will clear the minions as long as I keep the enemy hero off of it somewhat. Then I'm not going to lose towers and whatnot. Which means that controlling the lane is that much more important. So you got to position the minions better. Have them be on your side, and then zoning the enemy hero is gonna become much more important, and also building up waves.
So let's talk about the structures a little bit too, so I can explain to everyone what the changes are, because there's quite a few here. As I mentioned earlier, there's no more ammo. So every tower in the game is going to have unlimited ammo, towers and forts. You can't deplete ammo any longer and have that situation where it's out of ammo, it's defenseless against an incoming minion wave. So another change too, the walls connecting between the towers and the side bush, or whatever you want to call it, they'll be destroyed automatically if the connecting tower and middle gate is destroyed. So that has some implications as well. Your Valas can no longer use those to keep their stacks up, or Illidan's can't use them, say, to jump over the wall as an escape. There's a lot of other implications there as well for other heroes too. Tower vision range, this is one I found was interesting, has been increased by 25%. The tower damage to minions has been reduced by 25%. So those towers are actually going to extend further out into lane. And it's actually noticeable too if you get into the PTR. Structures, now this one I didn't really notice too much, so it'll be interesting to get a little more gameplay on this, have a warm-up period of half a second before firing and must face targets completely. So I'm assuming that there's a bit of a turn time to the tower so they can actually face where they're shooting. Then also another big thing too, standalone towers have been removed completely from the game. Those are the towers that were always stood next to the forts or the keeps that were isolated from the gate. However, those towers' health, experience, damage has all been shifted into the other structures, the front wall as well as the fort or the keep. The forts and keeps, but not the towers, so just mental note if you're a stealthy, have true sight, but not when disabled by a curse or something like Sylvanas' trait. So Abathurs, which I played in the PTR earlier, can sit safely next to a fort and not have to worry about a Zeratul sneaking up on them. Well, I mean, you still have to worry, but not as much. Minions, lane minions, have their base damage increased by 10%. That's presumably to counterbalance some of this ammo changes that are in the game. And another big interesting thing that I don't think a lot of people have really commented on too much, but I think it's kind of a big impact on just how some timings work. There's now no longer a 5-second delay before the first wave of the game spawns. So instead of that wave hitting in the middle, around 30 seconds, it's now going to be 25 seconds. This will change how many waves potentially you can clear out before the first objective spawns. There's going to be a lot more different timings. When we Cavalier Guest on talking about Battlefield of Eternity, you saying, well, you should get level 4 before getting to the first objective, and that can be done if you clear that final wave fast enough, right? So, objective times have changed enough too here that there's going to be a whole new analysis. I'm sure Cavalier Guest is just, so excited to do a complete new analysis of all the timings and everything, or maybe he's just blowing his head with how much stuff there's going to be here to analyze. But there's going to be a lot of changes with timings here. I think that's a big takeaway from all of this. So, with all that said, the Mystic, do you want to keep following up on how this laning phase is going to change? Because we're saying, you can sit back a little bit easier and soak that XP without having to worry about them pushing into you so hard. Blizzard tells us though that if you have the stronger lane matchup and you're out microing the other lane opponent that you have, this should benefit you in the end. How is that happening here? Because I'm not necessarily seeing that.
Well, it just means if you're out macroing them and you have the stronger lane matchup, you can, collect more globes and such, but it is still safer that you can sit behind their towers as long as you have some sort of clear that you can just, you're not going to die is the thing. Before you had to, or they just pushed into your towers, right? And then your towers ran out of ammo, and then they just killed your front wall or something while all your towers were out of ammo, and you had just like no help basically. Because once your towers are out of ammo, they're out of ammo for almost good unless you can really start winning the lane for some reason. Now, since they have unlimited ammo, it means that as long as you can clear somewhat, you can just keep some semblance of control of the lane. So you can just keep there, stay soaking, whereas before it's like they destroyed your wall and then they dove you under your fort and you're kind of screwed. But yeah.
So a tower and gate damage, is that more important than it was before? Should you be pushing into walls a little bit more aggressively than in the past? Maybe getting a little bit more greedy?
Yeah, if you have a wave built up, I think you can either push it by yourself if it's safe, or call your team up, and if you have that huge wave, and destroy the wall completely, because that is a huge factor now. Yeah. If you destroy the wall completely, then it means that there's just the fort there. There's no back tower anymore, so it's just one thing shooting at your minions, and you can dive a lot easier or zone them off of the minion wave.
How do you think this is going to affect specialists, especially your Zagaras or Asmodans of the world that would just throw everything down and back off to safety, right? You are almost incentivized more to stick around with your minions and try and do that extra damage. That's obviously a little bit more dangerous of a gameplay style. Do you think this is a nerf to specialists, or do you think it's going to be unchanged?
I think it is a nerf to specialists because originally, right, they spawned all this stuff, they drained the ammo, then the towers and stuff had no more ammo. So since they made the ammo infinite, they can't do that anymore. However, they still have the ability to put down the minions and make your sieging that much safer. So while they did get nerfed, they're not. I don't think they're like out of the game by any means.
Does this increase for Sylvanas though?
I think Sylvanas. I think she's the only specialist that didn't get reduced in value because since the towers have unlimited ammo, her trait, it didn't really matter that, whether the towers had ammo or not, she was just going to disable the towers. So while all the other specialists that summon minions and stuff, since their value got reduced because they can't drain ammo anymore, I think Sylvanas is still like unchanged. So she's the only specialist that didn't get quote unquote nerfed by the change.
Now, final thing before we move on, because we're already getting late in time, I want to get that debate in. Because we don't have that 5-second delay now, too, do you think we're going to see a shift from that 5 minute in the middle to going to lanes? Because now things are hitting faster, you have less time to deal with that whole like positioning and jockeying in the mid lane that happens, and you got to get to those lanes because you're going to miss soak 5 seconds sooner than you would in the past.
Personally, I think there's still going to be the skirmish in the middle lane because you'd get there much faster than the minions hit anyways. It's just that people are going to go to their lanes 5 seconds faster, but they're still going to have the skirmish in the middle.
Okay. I was kind of hoping you'd say those days are done because I like the days where it was like, hey, everyone just goes to their lanes and starts that way. Unless you've got like a stacking quest. I never saw the value in it. Okay, so mercenaries had some changes too. Merc camps are actually going to spawn 60 seconds into the game. I'm assuming this doesn't count for the boss. It's probably just your standard mercenaries instead of typically around the 2-minute mark. I think actually for Volskaya, like LiQuiuD was saying too, I think that the merc camps actually did spawn at 60 seconds. I remember them spawning awfully early, so it was earlier than 2 minutes, or maybe it was around 2 minutes previously. But still, we're going to have merc camps spawning at 60 seconds into the game. Siege Giants have had a big change to them. Apparently this was in place early in the game, early enough that I don't remember it. But Siege Giants, you can actually dodge their shots while taking the camp. You can always do that when they're in lane, but now you can do it when they're actually like they're defending their position so you can take them. And I did some soloing really early game as Zagara, and I was really proud of myself for not taking any damage. So that's definitely a possibility now that anyone can technically take a Siege Giant camp. Hellbats, those are in Braxis and Warhead. They've had some interesting changes too, and it's kind of hard to filter through all the different changes here and see how this is going to impact everything. Their respawn times have been doubled. The Hellbats are going to prioritize structures, similar to how catapults work. Health scaling was increased by 200%, and base health was increased by 125%. That's when you're taking them, so that's when they're in defensive mode. The damage of them was increased by 125%, but the scaling of the damage was reduced by 50%. So they're going to be pretty tanky later game to actually take the mercenary camps. When you take those Hellbats, they're not going to be as easy to take as they used to be. When in lane, the Hellbats has health scaling increased by 43%. Their base health has been increased by 25%. Damage increased by 50%, but the scaling was reduced by 66%. The structure damage taken was reduced by 50%. So a lot of numbers there, but generally tankier. They do more damage. Damage scaling has been reduced a little bit, and they take less damage from structures, hopefully making them a little bit more relevant than they have been in the past. They also apply a 3-second stacking -5 armor debuff. This stacks, according to Blizzard, up to 20 times, which I was wondering if that's a mistake or not, because that means -100 armor, and from what I understand, there should be the 75 cap, but that includes structures too. So if you have these focusing a structure for a significant period of time, I imagine those structures are going to start getting bled fast, so you need to deal with them. They're a little bit more tanky. The night camps, the wizard minion, and only the wizard minion in the night camps, has spell armor aura. So all allies that are around that minion, that includes other minions and heroes, will have the 30 spell armor. And this is only on the wizard minion, so once you kill him, that aura effect goes away. I don't know, I'm having a problem saying that word. When taking the camp, though, it only has 15 spell armor aura. The sappers have also changed too. While defending, they'll attack an area, so not heroes directly, so you can actually, again, solo with anybody because you can dodge their bullets. The explosion damage that sappers do scales over time, so I'm scared to see how much damage those do to forts and keeps on something like Towers of Doom, for instance. The health when in lane has been increased by 33%.
One of them will kill a keep by itself.
One will kill the keep, and then like the two shooting at the core will take out 10 shots each. The health in lane has been increased by 33%. The respawn timers on them have gone up from 105 to 120 seconds. And the sappers in lane will have 100 armor versus structures while charging the towers, and towers will ignore the charging sappers now, so they won't die mid-charge anymore. So, LiQuiud, what do you think the implications of all these merc changes are?
I think all of it is going to be insanely cool. Not just the merc changes, but like all of these changes are going to change the way we see HOTS play. I don't remember which show I was watching but it was Monday's Town Hall Heroes, where somebody in chat said, or maybe it was Heroes Hype Live last night, but someone in chat said, I don't think we're in Heroes 2.0 right now. I think we're in Heroes Loot Chest 2.0. And this next release will actually be Heroes 2.0 because they're changing a lot of the underlying game systems. I've also heard it called Heroes 3.0. Either way, like I totally like the idea behind it. All of these changes are just gonna, like, a lot of the game is going to change how it's played, and I'm looking forward to it.
This is definitely one of the most major updates we've ever had, especially to game systems and such.
Right, like, and that's why I like calling it 3.0 or calling it, like the guy that said Lootbox 2.0 or girl. It was chat. I don't know which it was, but. Like, the idea behind 2.0 really was just the loot changes, if you look at it. There were a couple of game system changes, but primarily it was really the loot system. And this is, like, a super big, like, system change, right? You have predictable objectives. You have merc camp changes. You have minion changes. You have laning changes with the globes. You have voice chat. Like, there's so much stuff in here that's changing the actual game system that not only are we going to see some really cool stuff in HGC and all of those other tournaments once the system launches, but even in our own games. Performance-based matchmaking, another very important improvement that is a core system game change. So really, this is the 2.0 launch, if you think about it that way. I'm excited. I can't wait to see what happens. The summit is coming up next month for all of the pros before they release all the HGC 2018 information. So I'm looking forward to that driving some of the system changes that, like, when they're released and how they're released. I'm also looking forward to maybe we'll get 3 bans there out of the summit, and maybe that's something they'll throw in with the start of the next, or maybe not the next if the system holds, they won't start the bans the next ranked season, but the season after. So the first season in 2018 would, in theory, have the first season that starts in 2018 would have 3 bans. So there's lots of cool stuff going on that I'm super excited about.
Except for the replay tool. I need replay tool 3.0.
Well, you know what I want? I want not only the replay tool, I want to be able to say, oh, look, the ODI guys are in a game. Let me just watch it from here. And just click, watch, right? Like, I want that system, and I want the replay system improved. Both of those would be awesome.
We know these are the top of the list for Blizzard. It's just a matter of resources, I think, for a lot of these changes and priorities for them. So hopefully we'll see those changes down the road, but I'm not holding my breath anytime soon because it's based on StarCraft 2's engine, which wasn't really built for this kind of thing.
Right. But we can hope that they'll replace the engine.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll see that, but we can still hope, right?
It was 4.0.
Yeah, maybe down the road. Okay, I'm going to skip over the rest of the PTR patch. We'll have to save that for next week. So that's talking about sandbox mode, some changes to Haunted Mines, and some UI changes as well. As well as actually the stealth changes we talked about before. LiQuid's laughing because he knew this was going to happen.
Man.
He knew this was going to happen. Because what I really, 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 really want to make sure we get done is the HOTS debate. So that means that it's time for the HOTS debate.
True power resides in the dark side of the Force.
No. Quicker, easier, more seductive, perhaps.
This is not a matter of debate.
A debate? This has become.
It's been a while since we've had the Yoda and Darth Vader bumper. One of my favorites.
We're gonna run long. We're running long, boys.
That's all right. This segment takes typically about 20 minutes or so. So the way that it works is we're doing a formal, quote-unquote, formal debate between LiQuiud and Mystic. You can vote for the winner on Straw Poll. We'll drop the link there at the end of the debate, and we'll also make sure that it's in the show notes. The topic for this week is that Cleanse is healthy for Heroes of the Storm. That's Cleanse the ability. So the punishment for the loser is they're going to have to, this is inspired by Romedy here, write an article for trolls.gg. Maybe we'll make them write a guide for a hero since we need to flesh out our guides a little bit more. So defending that Cleanse is healthy for Heroes of the Storm is going to be Mystic, and rebuking this statement is going to be LiQuiud. So the format for our Heroes HOTS debates is the defender will start with a 2-minute opening statement. The rebuker has 3 minutes for a rebuttal, followed by the defender who has 1 minute to rebut the rebuttal. The moderator is going to ask the rebuker a question. They've got 1 minute for a response. Then I'm going to ask the defender a question. They've got 1 minute for a response. And Romedy, if you come up with a question throughout the debate, you can feel free to ask it too during that portion. I can defer to you if you want to ask those questions. The rebuker then, after those segments, has 2 minutes for closing statements, followed by the defender, who wraps up the show with 2 minutes for closing statements as well. Now, each participant gets one audible. They can close at any time. They can throw it at any time, where they can interrupt the other person mid-argument for their very own 15-second statement. You only get one of these, and neither of you used it last time, so I sure hope someone's going to use an audible this time. So that being said, we're going to start with Mystic, who's defending here. Mystic, are you ready for your 2 minutes, sir?
I'm ready.
Okay, you're on the clock.
Okay, so to begin with, what is Cleanse? Cleanse is an ability that 3 healers get on a 60-second cooldown. Activate to make a target ally unstoppable for 1 second. You can't cast it on yourself. And the 3 healers that have this are Brightwing, Lily, and Rhaegar. So Cleanse is healthy for the game because it's one of the only things that stops displacement. Garrosh Flip, Junkrat Mine, the only way to make yourself not flippable or not displaceable is the status effect Unstoppable, which is given by Cleanse. So you need something to help you against that. And I think everything needs a counterplay somewhere. And I think Cleanse is a really big part of the game for that reason.
Okay. So LiQuiud, you, sir, have 3 minutes for your rebuttal. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. You're on the clock.
Okay, so while I can understand Mystic's point of view, I disagree heartily. If you look at the past trends, Blizzard has been steadily removing cleanse from the game. Why would they do that? Well, because they have access to all these back-end systems that we just don't have. And they can tell that cleanse just isn't a healthy mechanic for the game. It's not fun to land that game-breaking mosh pit only to have somebody get cleansed and interrupt you. Who likes that? Nobody likes that. Well, maybe Mystic does because he likes cleanse. But the rest of you players out there that love playing ETC, you know what I'm talking about. So, it's one of those systems that you either love it or you hate it. Personally, I hate it. Making somebody unstoppable for the short period of time, it feels kind of game breaking. I want to be able to stun you. I mean, I'm a Valera main, for God's sakes. I miss my stun. I want to be able to move you around. Like Alarak's a good example. Alarak should be able to shift you around. That's like part of his core kit. And if you cleanse the Alarak target, you're not moving that target. Grosh is another great example. Maybe learn to dodge so you don't have to get cleansed. Just throwing that out there. You don't have to stand in the pizza slice and get pulled back and then tossed over. ETC, cleansing the face melt. Okay, well, don't get sucked in. Like there's so many reasons and so many ways to combat what people are actually cleansing. Like, just get good. Cleanse feels like a crutch, and I think that's why you see Blizzard removing it. Just, it doesn't need to be there. If you look at some of those healers that Mystic picked up, some of them don't even really have a pick rate on cleanse, or it's a really low pick rate because the other talent on that tier is more highly picked, and I expect at some point that to go away. Now, I do find it interesting that Lily got to keep her cleanse, even though she got tweaked a little bit in this last go-around. But my esteemed colleague forgot Karazim at level 16, also has a cleanse, almost never picked because that talent tier so much better. So much better. So, Blizzard has lots of data. Blizzard knows the direction they're taking the game, and we have to stay strong in the belief that Blizzard's making the right decisions, and we're going the right way and not having cleanses that direction. Malfurion doesn't have cleanse, still a highly picked and highly contested healer, right? Like, obviously he's doing something right even without that cleanse. All right, I'm gonna drop it there because I need more feedback from Mystic before I can counter him.
So to interrupt real quick, I'm blown away that neither of y'all remember that Uther still has a cleanse.
I was looking at that. All right, so I got to be honest.
I'm sorry.
I was sure we weren't gonna get to the debate tonight. And I'm not a support player. I'm like, there's so much content. There's no way we're doing the debate. So I didn't look it up ahead of time. I was looking it up when Mystic started talking, and then he said 3 healers. I'm like, wait, I know for a fact Karazim still has a cleanse. I think somebody else does, but I didn't go through all my tabs to figure it out. And then Mystic stopped talking early, and I was like, oh God, I gotta talk now. Okay, I guess I'm not gonna get a chance to look the rest of it up. And yeah. So that's why I thought Uther had it, but I wasn't sure. I'm like 2 tabs away from Uther. I had Tyrande up still. So, but Mystic's a support player.
Well, hey.
I just don't pick it that often, all right? Because they're better talent.
Right.
You're shooting yourself in the foot, Mystic. Okay, well, you got 1 minute to recover, sir. Ready? You're on the clock.
Yeah. Okay, besides forgetting that 2 more supports had a cleanse. So LiQuiuD was saying, hey, just get good. What if you're a support player and you're already good? You think you're good enough to climb out of that elo hell that you're in right now. However, your team is not so good. You need a way to get them out of that garage flip. So let's just say you're the healer and you see the game-winning mosh pit coming over. And then so you're like, oh, shoot, I'm not going to get hit by this. So you don't get hit by that game-winning mosh pit. It's now 4-man mosh. However, you have the cleanse ability. You're playing Rhaegar. You cleanse that Murden. He's like, oh, I've been cleansed. Now I can interrupt the mosh pit. And the game-winning mosh pit has now turned into your game-winning cleanse.
Sorry.
It's gonna spend the last 10 seconds laughing.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, yeah.
All right. I'll let the cowbell go off there. There we go. Okay, so now we get to pose a question to LiQuiuD. He needs to compose himself first. Now, Romedy, did you want to ask the question, or did you want me to have a go at it?
No. Go for it.
Okay, LiQuiud. Oftentimes, you'll hear pros, like pros in the esports scene, be on Mystic's side of the argument, saying that cleanse is important because there's no counterplay to the stun lock, etc., and that it's required to enhance how the esports scene goes. So what do you have to say about that? You're on the clock.
Okay, so I actually understand the point that they're coming from. Here's where I'm coming from. As we've watched Blizzard reduce the impact of stuns over the past year, they nerfed Varian, they nerfed Valera, they nerfed Anubarak, they pseudo-nerfed Muradin and then made him strong again for different reasons. But even if you look at Muradin, they're micro stuns. They're not like super long 4-second stuns. Now, Muradin at one point could stun you for like 8 seconds and you were dead. That's been fixed. So as Blizzard tweaks stuns and how stuns work and turns them more into like micro stuns and less into these longer stuns, cleanse becomes less important because you're not being taken out of the game for such a period of time that you have to have a cleanse to play again. It's, I got interrupted for a half a second. I got interrupted for a half second. I got interrupted for a second. And that's just not cleanse worthy.
All right. So Mystic, in the famous words of LiQuiud, what do you have to say about just getting good to combat stealth or to combat cleanse?
Took my question. Nice.
Ready? And you're on the clock.
All right, well, LiQuiud just says, just get good, right? But there is a point where your mechanics are on par or even better than your opponents. However, there's not a 100% possibility that you're going to dodge everything. And there's not a 100% possibility that your teammates are going to dodge everything either, which makes cleanse that much more important. So if they're in a situation where your tank is getting stun locked, but they can't pop any of their defensive abilities because they're stun locked, you need that cleanse. Sorry.
Audible.
And so,
Okay, hold on. Pausing for the audible. Go ahead, LiQuiud.
All right. Yes, you absolutely need that cleanse if they're stun locked. And that's why we see Blizzard moving towards a game where you're no longer being stun locked, but having micro stuns. And with the addition of the micro stuns and the removal of the stun lock, cleanse is no longer needed.
Perfect. Okay, Mystic, you're back on the clock.
so I'm going to say they're not all micro stuns. Some of them, or a lot of them, are actually just really long CC abilities for like 2 seconds. Some of them are 0.75. Yeah, those are micro stuns, but I wouldn't count that as a micro stun. 0.75 seconds is quite a long time. So getting good, there's still targeted stuns. You can dodge some skill shot stuns, but you can still get stun locked, and I think cleanse is still necessary.
Okay. LiQuiud, 2 minutes for your closing statement. Go ahead.
Yes, there are some stuns that are still longer. Blizzard hasn't come around. Yes, ETC stun with Mosh Pit will always be longer because it's Mosh Pit and it's his heroic ability. But having said that, the micro stuns are here to stay in the form that they are, which means cleanse is less important. Even without the stun, we frequently see players blown up. Cleanse would not have saved them. Li Ming orbs coming in at the same time Zeratul hits you, you're probably dead. Hell, on Sonya, I'm like almost one-shotting people with the poison spear and a seismic slam, just coming in and crushing them. And that poison spear is a micro stun. It's only long enough for me to get from here to you, and then like you're moving as I hit you with that seismic slam. So, which is probably not the best example, but I'm going with it anyway because I just did it to some Junkrat today. The stun isn't always what's used to set you up, and I wish I had spent a little more time looking at some of the metas for HGC because unfortunately right now, Muradin being as strong as he is, he's played a lot in HGC. Same with ETC, but you know I remember a time when Johanna was the one to play, and she doesn't have these long stuns that 2-second stuns. It's just where the meta shifts, and it's not necessarily a stun meta right now. And I feel like cleanse just is not needed outside of, as we move towards this plateau where Blizzard will give us all micro stuns minus the mosh pit. And yeah, we'll leave it there, Daz.
I figured. Okay. Mystic. Yeah, you can usually tell when you're stretching for time.
Right? I was just like I was looking, man, and yeah.
Okay, Mystic. You've got 2 minutes for your final statements. Go.
Okay, while Blizzard has introduced just a lot of micro stuns in the game, and that we still have the other stuns, those aren't the only CCs in the game. We still have silences, we still have displacements, we still have roots, and all of those are still in the game. And cleanse is universal for all of those. So that game, like I was talking about that at Mosh Pit, the game-winning root, the really key roots or the really key silences and stuff, you could just cleanse them. And so those are really important for the healers because, like I was saying before, not everybody can always get out of everything. So you need some sort of fallback. So the cleanse is that fallback. Let's just say that your Vala, right, got mind controlled. Oh, well, if you have that cleanse, you can free her from the mind control, and that's really, really huge. And so it's healthy for the game because it gives that sort of counterplay, or that extra counterplay that you can have for displacements, for mind control. Like, you can put a shield on someone that's about to get garage flipped, and they might still die. You can put a divine shield on them, which would make it so that they wouldn't die, but you just used ultimate to stop a garage flip. But so I think cleanse is really necessary for stuff like that, especially if they put more displacements in the game, which I can really see Blizzard doing that in the future.
Okay.
Man, nobody takes mind control anymore. What's wrong with you?
Mystic.
Mind control.
Still have a silence.
It happens. Mystic, you didn't talk about cleansing out Nubrak's cocoon.
It's because that's impossible.
Get good. Come on.
All you had to say was removing the cleanses as they're doing is driving double support by making cleanse a precious commodity. That's all you had to say. You win the debate.
Well, everyone can form their own opinions because there's a straw poll link that I've dropped in chat. It's also in the show notes. So you can head over to straw poll and vote for who you think won the debate this week. We'll have the debate poll open for maybe a couple days before we declare a winner.
I may have lost this one, boys.
We shall see.
This when you admitted to being a Valera main. That was your fault.
I forgot
Everybody
about
that
those
watches this show knows I'm a Valera man.
Well, thanks, boys, for doing that segment. It'll be interesting to see who comes out on top. So, Mystic, we're bumping you for your Mystic Shakedown for next week. We're woefully getting close to being horribly over time. So I'm going to end the show here. So thanks to everybody for listening to the Nexus Trolls. Here's the Storm Podcast, which we stream live on this Twitch channel, twitch.tv/trollsgg, every week on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. So Romedy, if people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you online?
Oh man, they can find me on Twitter at RomedyMC. I tend to be fairly active there. You can also find me around the Nexus pretty much. Thanks
so much for coming on the show. It was great having you. I had to put my academic hat on too and try and think of the really good questions, not just the low fluffy stuff. It was like, okay, I gotta think of some good academic questions that you can actually respond to here. So it was great having you on for especially the eSports psychology segment.
And I appreciate the platform. Thank you very much.
No problem. Anytime you need that soapbox, you can always just give us a call. So LiQuiud, where can people find you?
So the best place to find me is on Twitter at LiQuiudGG. That's LiQiuDGG.
Mystic, how about you, bud? How's that Twitter profile coming?
You can find me at Mystic Shroud on Twitter.
He tweeted again today.
Oh, hey. The one tweet a week still holding up the pace car there?
Yep.
And you can find me at DazHots on Twitter as well. Thanks to all our patron supporters. If you like the show and you're looking for a way to support us, you can do so at patreon.com/trollsgg. You can also subscribe to our show on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, wherever you happen to find your podcasts online. You can visit our website at trolls.gg/the-nexus-trolls to watch this and past shows, along with past video streams, which can also be found on our YouTube channel. And we finally got a YouTube URL for it. So youtube.com/sleaze. I get one, I say it wrong. youtube.com/C for channel /trollsgg will get you there. For announcements about the show in general, here's the Storm News. You can follow us on Twitter at the Nexus Trolls. And finally, if you want to hang out with us in the Trolls community in-game, you can /join TrollsGG in-game. or you can join our Discord channel, which is getting awfully hectic these days. A lot of HGC chatter, a lot of chatter in general at trolls.gg/Discord. You can find the information to get in there at that website. And finally, if you need to get in touch with us, the best way is by email at the Nexus Trolls at trollsgg. And before we sign off too, I do want to make a small announcement. Next week, after the show, we're going to be doing a Nexus Feud, we formerly called Trolls Feud episode, where the Trolls.gg community or family is going to be taking on the Gankbush squad in a family feud format game show. It should be really fun. So definitely tune for that. It'll be a standalone video on YouTube. It's not going to actually be part of one of our episodes. So just kind of keep an eye out for that, because it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's going to be hopefully something we're going to be progressing with. And the winner will be taking on, say, like another podcast or another entertainment network going forward too. So we're really excited for that. But everybody, thanks for being on, LiQuid. Thanks, Mystic. Thanks, Romedy, for coming on the show again. Everyone, thanks for listening. Have a great week.